Have you considered starting a podcast? Looking for a way to make your business a voice of authority in an industry? Then Podcast Cadet is the solution for you. Whether starting a podcast for yourself, your brand, business, school, church, or just plain fun, Podcast Cadet is here to help you navigate the waters of the podcast industry. Specializing in one-on-one consultation and training with industry professionals in fields ranging from podcast technology and editing to distribution, monetization, and even social media strategies. Podcast Cadet tailors their services to the specific needs of you and your podcast. Do you already have a podcast and trying to find ways to engage and grow your audience? Sign up for your Podcast Cadet audit today and let us help you explore new and exciting ways to leverage your content and elevate your podcast brand to whole new levels. From consultational workshops to affordable podcast production and maintenance packages, Podcast Cadet is your one-stop shop for everything podcast related on the internet. Visit podcastcadet.com today to sign up for your consultation or training and use code CURIOUS20 to save 20% off your entire purchase. That website again is podcastcadet.com.
Howdy, and welcome back to our last hour of continuing coverage of the 2002 Texas Bigfoot Conference. Chris Jordan here with the Curious Realm. Sorry about the abrupt out there, folks. Special thanks to our good friend and guest, Daniel Allen Jones. This is the artwork for his upcoming book, Aurora, Texas, 1897. This upcoming is the 125th anniversary of that incident. He's got an amazing book covering that and other cases in Texas. Thank you so much for the signed copy of your artwork, Daniel. That will be going up in the Curious Realm studio, as well as the book Cryptids of the World from our guest right now, Ryan Edwards. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Nice to be here, guys.
Absolutely, man. Well, tell us a little bit about your book. Tell us a little about you, your research, everything you do.
Of course. My name is Ryan Edwards. I was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. A little thing I like to say with my research in cryptozoology is that, you know, every little boy loves dinosaurs, loves mysteries, loves animals. I guess I just never grew out of that.
Yeah.
And I found a world of cryptozoology which kind of fits with everything. It's a little mystery, little animals, little paleontology, a little bit of everything. Yeah,
it really is. It's a melange of stuff with cryptozoology because it's not just Bigfoot. It's, as Nick Redfern was saying this morning, it's Littlefoot. It's pygmies. There's so much rich folklore and history in that kind of stuff. So what was it that really brought you into the world of cryptozoology? What was it that really piqued your interest to begin with?
With me, I think the one memory I really have that really brought me into this world was one show on History Channel called Monster Quest.
Okay.
I think I was watching, I have this memory, it's so vivid. I think it was like 5 years old. I was on the couch in the living room, and it was Monster Quest playing, and there was a Thunderbird episode.
Oh, yeah.
And right when I think the bird flies over someone, I remember that, and I'm like, wait, monsters do exist. The world is bigger than it really is.
Yeah.
There's stuff out there that we haven't seen, or that we've seen and we don't know about.
Yeah, and as we talked about with numerous guests here today, it's interesting to see the cultural anecdotal evidence amongst things like that, especially stuff like Thunderbirds. Those are in just about every Native American lore all over the country. There have been numerous sightings of them, even here in Texas, and not so much the Thunderbirds, but pterodactyls.
Yeah,
pterodactyl sightings in Texas, things like that. So really, really wild, interesting things.
Yes. Like, a lot of people talk about cryptozoology, it's like, Sasquatch, Yeti, you Loch Ness Monster. I'm like, yes, those things are super interesting, but it's just the surface.
Yeah.
It's like cryptozoology really is like an iceberg. The tip of it's the big names, but underneath it, it's so much more.
Yeah, it really is a huge just gathering of stories, folklore, things like that. What are some, now, your book, Cryptids of the World, let's get into that a little bit. What are some of the topics that you get into in here? What was your favorite topic to cover in the book?
I think one of my favorite topics was a phenomenon known as proto-pygmies. You brought up Nick Redfern and his work with Littlefoot.
Yep.
Proto-pygmies is what researchers like Lauren Coleman and Ivan Marks and Ivan T. Sanderson, they call these creatures proto-pygmies. Because what the sightings occur along the equatorial areas of across the world. In Africa, they go by the name of Gugwi. And places like Indonesia, you have stories of the orang pendek. In South America, you have the Alux and the Didi. All these creatures have a very similar morphology and very similar behaviors. They're described as like almost like little men, but fur covered. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of unbelievable because a lot of people put it in the realm of like elves and leprechauns.
Yeah.
But there's physical evidence behind these creatures, like footprints and cultural history and cultural relativity between different tribes about these creatures. And recently, in the 1960s, of course, Lucy was found. And the idea of human evolution was brought up. And people were like, okay, we have stories of little hairy men, and this did truly exist. So what if these proto-pygmies are creatures like Australopithecus or Paranthropus that have survived into the modern day?
Yeah, precisely. And even within the last couple of years, the actual finding and possibility that there may still be living hobbits and on islands, things like that, actual skeletons being found, even within the last year, Dragon Man in China, where we're talking a cranial volume almost twice that of its Homo sapien cousins and stuff like that. And this it's not a fake fossil. It's the only one of its kind. But it has been verified by numerous scientific things that this man was 9 feet tall. And you know, to me, it brings up people like our guest L.A. Marzulli that we have to talk about giants, James Keenan, who does giant research, Brad Olson as well. These stories, even amongst Native American tribes, even amongst tribes in the Middle East, of red-haired giants that have been there for hundreds of years. The actual native people of the Southwest were told to stay out of the caves by their elders because, like, you will be eaten. They will come and eat you. These are stories that are amongst cultures the world over. Not just the pygmies, not just the Littlefoot, Bigfoot. It's really, really interesting.
Yes, like with a Sasquatch, it's kind of a cultural phenomenon. It occurs all across the world, and a lot of people put that up to just something called anthropomorphism.
Sure.
Humans like to see ourselves in nature.
Oh, yeah.
But I believe not exactly, because there's so much evidence for it.
Yeah.
You have the Yeti of the Nepal, you have the Yeren of China, the Yowie of Australia, the Bukitimo monkey man in the Southeast Asia.
Yep.
And all of these sightings have very similar morphology and very similar behavior sets. So how are these people talking amongst each other if there's no communication? How are people in Australia talking about something that looks Bigfoot-like?
And if there was no trade amongst tribes at the time, and their stories go back that far, especially whenever you're talking about Yowie, things like that. Like, those are stories from the Aboriginal people, and as opposed to Native Americans, things like that, we know that the Aborigines trace their lineage back to literally the first men. So to know that for literally thousands of years of spoken history, this has been their history.
Yes.
That these things live around Rainbow Rock. It's really, really wild to once again discount these most of the time. And for me myself, it's one that, as I say all the time, I'm more prone to believe people that have been telling the story for hundreds of years, and it's an accepted part of their culture.
Yes, like that's one thing with me and cryptids. I look at the culture. If the indigenous population has stories of these creatures, the likelihood of them existing is very high.
Yeah.
If there's no indigenous stories and it just came around when the white man came around, then it's probably just a cultural idea that's brought with them.
Or it could even be something that, tribal elders came up with in order to scare them off.
Yes. Like I know, for instance, to take the Wendigo phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
The Wendigo original Native American description, something more like what we now know as like the rake, or like very skinny humanoid, white skin.
Yeah.
Modern day descriptions of like a antlered deer-like animal, that only came around when Anglo-Saxons came into North America. And they brought their stories of werewolves came, and the stories of the Wendigo mixed with it, and now we have a modern interpretation.
Yeah, precisely. We have the shapeshifter creature that we have that's almost like a skinwalker to an extent.
Yes.
And like you said, very, very much in the world of lycanthropy and werewolfism, the accounts come to now as opposed to the traditional accounts. And now, in your research, what kind of things, of course, have you found here in Texas? Because, I mean, of course, you're talking about the world, but you're based out of San Antonio. So
Yes.
What kind of research have you done in your own backyard for cryptids?
For instance, an eyewitness of mine talked to me about here in San Antonio. There's a place called Salado Creek, and they talked about weird howling and peculiar screams they would hear. And this is almost the middle of town.
Yeah.
And I talked to them, and I'm like, okay, could it be coyotes? And they're like, no, I had no coyote howls.
Yeah.
So I did an experiment. I had on YouTube coyote howl, wolf howl, dog howl. Then I think American Werewolf in London howl. Played all four of them, and the only one that matched was one at the end.
Wow.
The American Werewolf in London.
Wow.
And what I did is I went out, little night investigation just to see what it is. The likelihood of it being a creature, it's low, like living in the area, but what I think it's because it's a creek. I might use the creek as like a natural highway. Comes up from out of town, uses Salado Creek to get in, maybe hunts, does whatever it needs to along the creek.
Yeah.
And one thing that's also peculiar with it is that just down the road from where they had this phenomena, this hearing, they didn't see the creature. They have the Black Swan Inn, which is one of the most haunted places in Texas.
Yeah.
Is there a correlation? Maybe, maybe not. Just because two things occur doesn't mean they're correlated.
Sure. Absolutely. Even if they occur within the same mile of each other, it doesn't mean that they're correlated. And that's a really, really good point to bring up, especially whenever you're talking sighting experiences, things like that. Our last conversation was with Craig Woolheater, and part of the conversation was, how do you go about vetting a story? How do you go about vetting somebody who's giving you an account whenever you're sitting down face to face like this even? Yes, I say on my show all the time, I am given to always believe the story until proven otherwise. That's just me. I myself have had my own experiences in life, spiritually, where people are like, yeah, okay, dude. So I understand that. I get that. So I'm always more prone to understand somebody's experience and want to understand their experience and how it changed them than to discount it. But with your experiences, especially in Solano Creek, what was it like for you to, I guess, go through the investigative process? Let's kind of walk through that a minute, because I think a lot of people unfortunately see TV shows, and we talk about it regularly, especially in paranormal investigations, ghost hunts, things like that, where it's like, should you be using a laser thermometer that's not actively measuring the temperature in the air, it's measuring the surface that it's touching.
Yeah.
Or should you be using an ambient room temperature, and actively catch the temperature of the cold spot that you're feeling?
Yes.
It's one of those, it's hard for me to bite, and I've heard a lot of EVP. It's hard for me to bite on fully digital EVP. Because the whole concept originally back in the 1910s, 1920s, when these experiments were carried out, was that the ghost or entities were able to manipulate the weak electromagnetic field of the record head. Hey, there's a lot of things that will affect the electromagnetic field of a record head.
Yes.
So I could see that. But to be able to affect the digital ones and zeros that are representing a sound that's being recorded.
It's a little bit harder to
It's a little bit
believe.
harder for me to bite as an audio engineer.
Yes.
Like, that's what I do for a living. So, yeah, and I'm not discounting it. I'm not saying that people haven't gotten them. I would just like to see the actual science behind that.
Yes.
Which
I'm the type of guy that I really want the science behind it.
Yeah.
I don't discredit certain paranormal phenomena and a little bit more out there ideas.
Sure.
But I am very much okay, physical, scientific evolution, all these ideas.
Yeah.
But I don't discredit the other side either.
Sure. And you know, that actually brings up a topic and a point of topic. When it comes to cryptids, especially, and especially when you're talking Bigfoot and other cryptids like chupacabras, frequent accounts bring them into paranormal.
Yes.
And of course, paranormal is a catch-all term. It literally is exactly what it says, just like a UFO. It is exactly what it says until proven to be alien.
Yes.
It is an unidentified flying object. It's something that we don't know. So paranormal, yeah, it was something
It's
just outside of the
normal.
norm. It's
Yeah.
not something that happens to you Monday through Friday.
Yes.
You know, but there's a lot of a lot of people tying cryptids to the paranormal. And when I say paranormal, I mean UFO sightings, UFO abduction, portals, time travel,
Orbs,
bilocation, things like that. You know, where do you stand on that as a researcher? Not personally, and of course not
Spiritually,
dissing
or
anybody
like that,
else's
yeah.
belief
Yeah.
or their concept or their paradigm of these creatures. But where do you stand on that?
With me, I not that I discredit the ideas of like people thinking Bigfoot comes out of portals or anything like that.
Sure.
It's a possibility. No one's an expert in this field.
Yeah.
But
We got to prove Bigfoot before we can prove the portal thing.
yes. But with me, I just don't have a lot of volition into it. I don't put a lot of research into that type of aspect
Sure.
because it's almost like trying to solve a mystery with another mystery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I like to say is like a saying in science is correlation does not mean causation. Just because two things are occurring doesn't mean they're causing one another.
Our good friend Stephen Myers says that all the time.
Yes.
All the time.
Like, let's just say a person is having Bigfoot sightings on their property.
Yeah.
And at the same time, their house is haunted.
Yeah.
These might be two phenomena occurring in the same space, but they're not causing one another.
Yeah.
It's like if you're a kid and you clap your hands and there's thunder. You think, oh, I just made that happen. But with logic and you get older, you're like, okay, no, I did it. It just happened at the same time.
Yeah. There was a front coming through, and I just happened to clap at the right moment.
Yes, like a lot of people say there's no such thing as coincidence, which I can understand that, but sometimes coincidence does occur.
Sure, absolutely. It's not all synchronicity.
Yes.
You know, and even to the point that you made just a second ago of if you do, let's just say that you are one of them that accepts the fact that Bigfoot or other cryptids come through portals, what have you. Now you have an active question of, now you're out in the field. Which equipment do you bring with you? Which ones do you break out? Do you start researching the portal?
Yeah.
Do you start researching the portal evidence first, or the Bigfoot?
Yeah.
You know,
It's like, it kind of brings in a whole...
It's a whole nother ball of wax.
Yeah, it brings in a whole bunch of like wibbly wobbly stuff in one just field. And it's like, I'm okay with the people that are bringing those ideas into the field.
Sure.
But at the same time, it kind of muddies up the water.
Well, and like I said, not just muddies up the waters in that way, but when you get out there, what research are you doing? What is the focus of the research? What evidence are you looking for? Because you're going to bring a whole different set of equipment with you to read for weak electromagnetic fields than you will to trap hair off a tree, or, you know, things like that. So it really is that fact of, you know, you get a team like King Gerhard and Daniel Allen Jones out in the field. We got 25 hours in which to conduct some research, guys. What is our focus?
Yes.
What are we devoting time to? What are we devoting money and energy to?
Yeah, so you can have maybe like two teams and one specializes in a certain thing, another person specializes. But if you're out there looking for 5 different things, you're not going to find any of them because you're separating your time. You're not focusing on one certain aspect.
Yeah, it's the idea of a shotgun blast is powerful up to this.
Yes.
A rifle's going to carry you a whole lot farther.
Yes.
And it's a whole lot more accurate, you know.
Yeah.
So to take all your effort and focus it on one thing, you're probably a lot more likely amongst 5 people out in the field to find evidence for one thing than to find it for 5 if your efforts are scattered.
Like, I know, I like to bring up with this, but Albert Einstein, he's an astrophysicist. He wasn't an astrophysicist, a biologist, an anatomist, a doctor, a this.
Yeah.
Because he focused on one particular thing. A lot of scientists worry about one particular thing.
Yeah.
They don't have a shotgun blast of all
That's
these
right.
different fields. They might know a little bit of everything,
Yep.
but they don't specialize in all these fields.
That's right. That's
Because,
right.
heck, the human brain can only hold so much information.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
can do only so much critical thinking.
Yeah, prime example. You go to your general practitioner, you got a back problem, he's going to send you to an orthopedic specialist because
Yes.
he is a general practitioner. What you need is a specialist.
Yes.
Now, with that being said, going out in the field yourself to do research, what's normally in your kit? What are you normally bringing along? What kind of evidence are you typically trying to gather?
With me, I try to come along with like anything for physical evidence. Like, for instance, like if I do a Bigfoot research, I might do a plaster cast, or like plaster with me.
Sure.
Of course, like anything that's, I like to say, anyone that wants to go out there and do research, think as if you're gonna go out camping for a week.
Yeah.
Like anything you would bring, like survival gear, anything
Yeah.
for like a tent, things like that. Especially plan for the worst.
Yes.
Because a lot of people talk about survival situations. Don't let a Bigfoot hunt turn into a survival situation.
Yeah, man, don't go out for a 3-hour hike without a spare bottle of water with you, not just the one that you're drinking.
And know the area beforehand. Like,
Yeah,
One
yeah.
thing I do is I look at topographical maps. Like, okay, where's the hills? Where's the waterways?
Sure.
Worst case scenario, where can I go to know where there's people?
Well, even the thought, especially nowadays, I mean, of course, with our beautiful cell phones, we have things like last known location.
Yes.
So if your cell phone dies, it's going to ping and let somebody
Or
know.
even have like a satellite
But-
phone with you.
Yeah,
Those
sure.
Like heck, out here in East Texas, there's places where it's a dead zone. You
Yeah.
won't get a signal. So
Yeah.
if you have something like a satellite phone, you will always get a signal.
You'll always have a signal, precisely. And even the old school Boy Scout thing of like, hey, just let somebody know the direction you're headed, man. Like,
Yes.
I'm starting here. This is where I'm going. This is where you will find my truck parked, things like that. Because, yeah, it can really, you can get caught up in the moment. And no matter how well you plan, I mean,
Yeah.
the worst could happen
And one
at any
thing-
moment.
And one thing I always say too is don't let emotions run high. Like if you're on a research trip and let's just say you hear rustling in the bushes, you don't go chase after it or something like that.
Yeah.
You don't let your emotions take control of you. You always think logically. Always think, okay, what's the safest thing I can do here?
With that being said, especially because one of the points I bring up, especially in paranormal research, whenever you're watching shows, a lot of people forget the fact that the job of the producer and the director of the show is to sensationalize what's being done.
They want views.
They
not
want views. You
research
got to
behind
sell
it.
the ad space, man.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of practice on TV that people think is common practice of, ooh, I think I just got something. Let's stop and look at it. Is that your practice out in the field?
No.
Thank
Like,
you.
One thing
Thank you.
that I do when I'm in the field is like, okay, especially with Sasquatch,
Yeah.
it's a smart creature. It knows when you're watching it. If you stop and watch it, it's going to walk away.
Yeah.
I say ignore until it comes closer.
Yeah.
Ignore because the more it's with you, the more evidence you can capture.
Well, yeah.
Even if I'm just hearing it in the distance, okay, how's it walking? Where is it walking?
Yep.
What type of behaviors can I try to infer from what I'm hearing or what I'm seeing?
And even at that note, whenever you've got the recorder rolling, to catch the hoops, the hollers, the whoops, the yells, to literally just have a notebook in your hand while you're sitting under the tree. Don't stop recording anything like that. Record your location, record the timestamp, the date.
Yes.
It was recorded at, hour 122,
yeah.
minute 22.
It's all about the data.
Absolutely.
Like, that's what we're out there to collect
Yeah.
is data, not stories.
Well, and not just that, but it's looking at that data dispassionately.
Yes.
And not when you're adrenalized in the moment, not when you're excited and, oh, I think I got something. Because, you might now think you got something when you didn't.
Yeah,
Because
you
you're
go home
adrenalized.
and you listen to the recording and
Yeah.
like, okay, that was an owl.
Well-
that was a puma.
Well, and
'Cause-
even the fact of, like, whenever I used to record bands, I would give them their CD. Don't listen to that on the way home. don't listen to it tomorrow. Listen to it like Sunday. Give yourself like 24 hours to clear your head, clear the experience, and listen to it with cold ears so that you're listening to it dispassionately and you're separated from the moment, you know?
Or even always get like a second or third opinion.
Yeah.
Like ask your friends that weren't there.
Yep.
Okay, what do you hear? What did you see in this picture?
Yeah.
And if they have an opinion that's different from yours, doesn't mean they're wrong.
No.
Or if you're right or you're wrong, it might be like, okay, let's just see what did we actually see.
Yeah.
Because one thing that I always talk to eyewitnesses about, eyes and the brain are not a camera. You do not remember things correctly. There are pseudo memories that your brain makes up.
That's why eyewitnesses are not ironclad in court.
Yes.
They're great, but they ain't going to make the case.
Yes. You can have 10 eyewitnesses, but if you have one piece of DNA, it trumps those 10 witnesses.
Every 10 of them, and every one of those will see that situation on the street through the filter in which they live life.
Yes.
Straight up, and through their filter of experience.
Yes, your paradigm affects your perception.
Absolutely.
Like, I think I forget which cryptid I talk about it, but I say your perception creates your own viewpoints. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Let's just take, for instance, Bigfoot. If you have what they call like Bigfoot on the brain, if you're out in the woods, everything you hear is going to be a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
It's all about perception and what you believe.
Yeah, and that's just it. And that's why some of it, especially, like I said, if you're sitting under the tree, be writing. Be doing something else. Let your ears be awake, but don't let your eyes deceive you while that's happening.
Yes.
You know, if your job is to be recording audio, be recording audio.
Yes.
Let the video person record the video, you know, that kind of stuff. And focus in on what you're doing.
Yes,
So,
and worry about what your own viewpoints bring to the table. Like,
Yeah.
I think I bring it up in the Goatman page. A lot of people have this preconceived notion of a belief of something. If they have a preconceived belief in something, they expect to see it in their own reality.
oh, yeah.
It's like, for instance, like, okay, I'm super religious, so I see Jesus' face in a
Yeah,
picture,
the
or something like that.
phenomenology of what they're researching tends to go that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a double standard. A lot of people have that double standard in the field. And that's all it is this confirmation bias.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay,
Absolutely.
don't just because you believe in something doesn't mean your evidence should be finding against that.
Yeah, or that not just that all your evidence that you find should be toward that, but don't discount everything else that you find also.
Yes.
You know, so I want to thank you so much for taking the time. It's been absolutely fantastic to sit down with you. I've seen you set up outside with the vendors all day with your really, really awesome Australopithecus skull.
Gigantopithecus.
Oh, Gigantopithecus,
You're
yes.
good.
But I can't wait to get home, crack this open over my upcoming trip. Tell everybody where they can go to follow you on social media, visit your website, follow your blog, podcast, where they can go to get your book. Time for shameless self-promotion, Ryan.
I'm always down for some shameless self-promotion. Well, on it, I do have a Facebook page. Just look for my name, Ryan Edwards. I also have an Instagram called redwords.cryptid25. If you want to get the book, it's available at most bookshops. Look for it at either Barnes & Noble, Half Price Books, Amazon, anything like that. It is there. It's newly published. It only came out last August.
Oh.
But I'm trying to get it out there. Like, I try to do events like this.
Absolutely.
And if you guys are wanting to follow me, just go look for my accounts. I'll be there. I'm always down to talk to eyewitnesses or people that are other researchers.
Yeah.
With me, I always love networking.
Absolutely.
Like, there's no such thing as a non-interesting person.
Yeah.
If you want to reach out to me, go ahead.
That's just it, man. Exactly. There is no such thing as a non-interesting person. You are more than an interesting person yourself, Ryan. So thank you so much for taking the time during this very, very busy Bigfoot Roadshow here in Mineola. We will definitely be having you on the show again and again. You're right down the road in San Antonio from us in Austin. So
Yes.
as neighbors, we definitely need to get together and have you on the show more frequently. Thank you so
course.
much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the conference, man.
Of course.
While you are online checking out everything from Ryan, make sure to stop on by CuriousRealm.com. CuriousRealm.com is where you can find all of the episodes. It's where you can find the free app that you can tune into our live streams like this, not only from on location, but live every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central. Typically a live guest in the first hour, commercial break, followed by pre-recorded content. Here in the next couple weeks, I will be on the road, so You'll be, all of you who were not able to tune in live to this, will be able to hear the replays of this stuff during our full pre-recorded episodes that will be pushed out while I'm on the road. Stay tuned, folks. We have another guest before we end today. We will be back here in just a minute from the Texas Bigfoot Roadshow in Mineola. See you in just a minute.